Hi folks, it's Farmer Tom here. Just a few days ago, I received a lovely message from a really nice journalism student. Hi Jamie. And she said the following. Hello, I'm a journalism student in London and I'm currently working on a news feature on the rise in people choosing to become vegan and the effect this is having on British farmers. I can see from your Twitter page and website that you're a farmer, and I was hoping you'd be willing to give me your opinions on those questions. On these questions, the questions being, firstly, why do you think more people are choosing to become vegan? What impact is this having on British farmers and what will the future hold? Thirdly, what are British farms doing to overcome this rise? And finally, do you think the popularity of veganism will continue to rise in the future? I think, as ever, it's really important to fully examine the question before getting to the answer. And I think there's one question that really gives away the stance or the kind of predisposition, and that's namely, what are farmers doing to overcome the rise of veganism? And this assumes that there's a conflict, farmers versus vegans, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Farmers are food producers. We grow things for people to buy, and as regards my family, we run a mixed arable and pasture farm, so we produce cereals, so wheat and barley and oilseeds, oilseed rape, linseed, etc. And we raise, in our case, we raise sheep. And so, in very simplistic terms, if people want to buy more cereals, we'll grow more cereals. And if people want to buy more lamb, then we'll produce more lamb. So thanks to the technology developed since the Industrial Revolution nearly 200 years ago, our medium-sized average farm can produce enough food to feed over 8,000 people, meaning that if you're a doctor, a lawyer, taxi driver, builder, or in fact, if you have any job that isn't farming, you can do that because somewhere a farmer is growing the food that you eat. So there's no conflict between farmers and the people who choose to be vegans. In fact, unless you were to personally grow your own food and not forgetting to bottle and preserve it from harvest to get you all through those really hard winter months, vegans, like everybody else, couldn't do what they do without farmers. So farmers have no conflict with vegans. Now, there has been recently, I think, a really sad attack by certain militant-minded people under the banner of veganism on meat producers and dairy farmers. And I do think that is particularly unkind and inappropriate. Farmers produce food, and I, like so many other farmers, I'm really proud to do just that. We all have our own part to play. I think in the world of food, it's the role of government to feed the nation. They allocate the resources and set laws so that people are fed. And it's the role of farmers to supply the market demand for food and to do so within the laws of land and the regulation demanded by the market. The farmer's role isn't even to be a custodian of the countryside, though every farmer I know is proud to do that, even though it can reduce profits and take time and resources. Our role is to supply the market demand for food. So while certain extremists have chosen to harass farmers on social media and in the news and stage demonstrations on farms, and in several cases threaten violence or carry out violence against farmers, it doesn't mean that farmers and vegans are opposed. I would remind you also that law-abiding British farmers work within one of the most heavily regulated and controlled countries in the world in terms of animal welfare and our standards of production, which are the envy of most nations who trail in our wake, certainly in terms of food production standards. And I'm concerned that the question does point to the sad separation that's happened in recent decades between the consumers of our great nation and the food producers. And I now see that as part of my job to reduce that gap and to shine a light on the amazing farming sector that I'm really proud to be a part of, and to show people what happens on the other side of the farm gate. So do check me out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, search Farmer Tom, give me a like or a wave, a follow, ask questions and journey through the farming year with me. So there we are. So we looked at the question. Let's have a look at the answers. So question one was why do you think more people are choosing to become vegan? And I think this is partly to do with the fact that people are beginning to question more what they're eating. Food, as we all know, can be toxic or it can be a tonic. It can be beneficial or it can be bad, it can harm or it can heal. And I think it's a really good thing that people are starting to question more what they're eating. And I want people to not only understand what they're eating, but to demand the best food by paying a fair price for it. We're in a market economy, and that is how things are really changed, is by the consumer. And I want those consumers to make wise decisions. Unfortunately, we seem to be operating in a kind of post-truth media environment, with our press, news feeds and media agencies soaked in dubious stories and scientifically questionable sources, or just blatantly malicious lies. And that can come from the extremes of both, or any sides of the debate. It can come from big business, right the way through to single-purpose extremist groups pretending to be mainstream. And increasingly, it's coming from well-intentioned but wildly wrong individuals, and all of this is seen through the lens of a media which only sells stories with a big ugly headline. And hence why I invite anyone through my social media accounts to see what a real farmer gets up to day to day. And whilst I think many people are vegan as a choice to strip back their food intake, reduce their exposure to cheap meat and to imported products with low standards, and they're probably trying to tread lightly, ecologically speaking, I think more and more people are becoming vegan because of the absolute disgusting, abhorrent images of animal cruelty that come to light from time to time and are represented as mainstream. And I think actually that a lot of intelligent and genuine and well-meaning people are seeing that as the whole truth. And it almost feeds a delusion. That's in medicine, that's the diagnosed term, delusion, which is a mistaken belief that is held with strong conviction, even when presented with superior evidence to the contrary. And I don't say that to offend the majority of vegans who have made a conscious choice for one of a number of very good personal reasons, but to kind of highlight the effects of a maligned media. And I'll give my further thoughts on that later on, perhaps in a separate post. So let's look at the second question. So the question was, what impact is this having on British farmers, and what will the future hold? I think probably, given what I've said already, it's a bit of a non-question, but my general hope for the future is that consumers will demand a greater emphasis on pasture-fed meat, on ethically produced foodstuffs, and agricultural legislation guided by the latest peer-reviewed science. And when I say demand, I mean give a value that they're willing to pay for. Our entire food supply chain is really driven by the market, by customer spending. So by you and me, and how and where we choose to buy our foods and what food we choose to buy. In essence, people need to eat, and my farm business will respond to demand in the best way we can within the law and best practice guidelines of the land, and under my own moral direction regarding stewardship of the land as the farmer. Third question, penultimate question, what are British farms doing to overcome this rise? So as I said earlier, I'm not, and nor do I think that any farmer is intent on overcoming veganism. There just isn't a conflict. However, I do see more and more British farmers throwing open their gates, either virtually or actually, and bringing people, customers, consumers, our ultimate employers, to see what happens on the other side of the farm gate, which is a great thing. And finally, fourth question is, do you think the popularity of veganism will continue to rise in the future? I can't predict the future, but I can say that farmers will continue to farm the very best way they can. And I can also say that in the UK, we have a farming system with legislation for animal welfare, for environmental stewardship, and for the production of premium food that is the envy of the world. And it's the best it's ever been in history. As I had the pleasure of hearing one of my food heroes speak just recently to a whole room full of farmers. That was ethnobotanist James Wong. And he said, we live in a time of the most available, nutritious, accessible, healthy and affordable food supply. And it's thanks to people like you, to the farmers in the room. So I hope, Jamie, and to anyone who's listening, that encapsulates my views. Farmers and vegans are not in conflict. It is a non-battle. And we as farmers, and I'm passionate about food production. Bye for now. I hope you've been interested in what I've had to say.